The GPS had stopped working 20 miles ago, and now Sophia Chen's rental car was sliding sideways on a mountain road that seemed to lead nowhere. Snow pelted her windshield faster than the wipers could clear it, and the temperature gauge was climbing dangerously high. "This is exactly why I don't do nature," she muttered, gripping the steering wheel as another gust of wind rocked the small sedan. Her designer heels and business suit were hardly appropriate for a Colorado blizzard, but the corporate retreat had been mandatory, and she planned to drive straight back to Denver after the morning session. That was before the light snow flurries had turned into what locals were calling the worst storm in a decade. The car shuddered to a halt as steam began pouring from under the hood. Sophia stared at the dashboard in disbelief. She was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with no cell service and darkness falling fast. "Perfect. Just perfect," she said, pulling her thin coat tighter. At 32, Sophia had built her reputation as one of Manhattan's most ruthless corporate lawyers by being prepared for everything. Apparently, everything didn't include being trapped in a blizzard wearing a $1,000 suit. She was debating whether to stay in the car or start walking when she heard the rumble of an engine. Through the swirling snow, headlights appeared, attached to what looked like a massive pickup truck that seemed to eat the mountain road for breakfast. The truck pulled up beside her, and a man emerged who looked like he'd stepped out of a Western movie. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair visible beneath a worn cowboy hat, he moved through the storm like it was a mild spring day. His weathered face was serious as he approached her window. Sophia rolled it down, immediately regretting it as snow whipped into the car. "Ma'am, you can't stay here," he said, his voice deep and authoritative. "This storm's going to get worse before it gets better. I'm Jake Morrison. I've got a ranch about 5 miles up the road. You need to come with me." "I appreciate the offer, but I'll just call for help," Sophia began, then remembered her dead phone. "Actually, my phone isn't working." "No cell towers up here," Jake said matter-of-factly. "And no tow trucks coming out in this weather. You've got 2 choices, freeze to death in that car or trust a stranger." Sophia looked at this rugged mountain man, every instinct screaming that getting into a truck with someone she'd just met was insane. But as another blast of wind shook her car, survival instinct won out. "Fine," she said, grabbing her purse and laptop bag. "But I need to be back on the road first thing tomorrow." Jake's expression didn't change as he helped her into his truck, though she caught what might have been amusement in his dark eyes. "We'll see what the weather has to say about that." The ride to his ranch was a white-knuckle experience for Sophia, though Jake navigated the treacherous roads with casual expertise. His truck was warm, smelling of leather and something woodsy that she couldn't identify. Country music played softly on the radio, and Sophia found herself stealing glances at her rescuer. He was handsome in a completely different way from the men she usually dated. No expensive suits or carefully styled hair, just raw masculinity and quiet confidence. His hands on the steering wheel were large and calloused, speaking of hard work and outdoor life. "What brings a city girl to the middle of nowhere?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. "Corporate retreat," Sophia replied. "Team-building exercises and trust falls. The usual corporate nonsense." "And you were driving back to Denver in this weather because?" "Because I have a deposition tomorrow morning that could make or break a $50 million case," Sophia said, then immediately wondered why she was explaining herself to this stranger. Jake nodded slowly. "Must be important." "It is. My entire career depends on it." They pulled up to a ranch house that looked like something from a postcard, log construction with a wraparound porch, warm light glowing from the windows, and smoke curling from the chimney. It was picture-perfect and completely foreign to Sophia's urban sensibilities. "Welcome to Morrison Ranch," Jake said, helping her down from the truck. "Been in my family for 4 generations." Inside, the house was rustic but comfortable, with exposed beams, a stone fireplace, and furniture that looked handmade. It was the complete opposite of Sophia's sleek Manhattan apartment, yet somehow it felt welcoming. "You can take the guest room upstairs," Jake said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. "I'll get a fire going and rustle up some dinner." "I don't want to impose," Sophia said, though she was already grateful for the warmth. "Maybe I could call a cab or—" "Ma'am, the nearest cab is about 100 miles away, and they don't come up the mountain even in good weather," Jake said patiently. "You're stuck here until this storm passes." The reality of her situation hit Sophia like a physical blow. She was trapped in the wilderness with a complete stranger, missing the most important deposition of her career, and wearing completely inappropriate clothing for ranch life. "How long do these storms usually last?" she asked weakly. Jake studied the weather outside, his expression thoughtful. "Hard to say. Could be a day, could be a week." "A week?" Sophia's voice cracked. I can't be gone for a week. I have meetings, court dates, a life to get back to. Well, unless you can control the weather, you don't have much choice, Jake said, his tone gentle but firm. Might as well make the best of it. As if to emphasize his point, the lights flickered as wind howled around the house. Sophia sank into a chair by the fireplace, the full magnitude of her situation settling over her. She was Sophia Chen, corporate shark, master of her universe, and she was completely, utterly helpless. Jake watched her for a moment, then disappeared into the kitchen. When he returned, he was carrying 2 mugs of coffee and wearing an expression that might have been sympathy. First time in the mountains? He asked, settling into the chair across from her. First time anywhere that doesn't have room service and Wi-Fi, Sophia admitted. Might not be such a bad thing, Jake said quietly. Sometimes a person needs to slow down, see what they've been missing. Sophia looked at this man who seemed completely at peace in his isolated mountain home, and wondered what it would be like to live without the constant pressure and noise of city life. Then she shook her head. She was clearly suffering from altitude sickness or something. I should try to get some sleep, she said, standing. Maybe the storm will pass overnight. Jake nodded, though something in his expression suggested he knew better. Guest rooms at the top of the stairs. There are some of my sister's old clothes in the closet if you need something more practical. As Sophia climbed the stairs to the guest room, she caught sight of herself in a hallway mirror. Her perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her makeup smudged, and her expensive suit looked ridiculous in this rustic setting. For the first time in years, Sophia Chen looked human instead of corporate. And despite everything, she wasn't sure she minded. Sophia woke to the sound of absolute silence. No traffic, no sirens, no city noise at all. For a moment she couldn't remember where she was, then the events of the previous day came flooding back. She was stranded on a ranch in Colorado with a cowboy who looked like he'd stepped out of a romance novel. Sunlight streamed through the guest room windows, revealing a winter wonderland outside. Snow had piled up to the windowsills, and more was still falling steadily. Her heart sank as she realized Jake had been right. She wasn't going anywhere today. She'd slept in her slip, having found Jake's sister's clothes too foreign to contemplate. But now, looking at her wrinkled business suit, she reluctantly opened the closet. Inside were jeans, flannel shirts, and boots that looked like they'd actually been worn for work instead of fashion. 20 minutes later, Sophia made her way downstairs wearing clothes that felt completely alien. The jeans were snug but comfortable, the flannel shirt warm and soft. She'd even found a pair of boots that almost fit. Jake was in the kitchen, standing over the stove with his back to her. He traded his coat for a simple white t-shirt that showed off broad shoulders and muscled arms. When he turned around, his eyes widened slightly. Well, look at that, he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. You clean up nice for a city girl. Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Your sister has good taste. Had, Jake corrected quietly. Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry, Sophia said, meaning it. I shouldn't have assumed. It's fine, Jake said, turning back to the stove. She would have liked you. Always said I needed someone to shake up my quiet life. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the kitchen, making Sophia's stomach growl. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a home-cooked breakfast. Her usual routine involved grabbing coffee and a protein bar on her way to the office. Can I help with anything? She asked, feeling useless. Can you cook? I can order takeout like nobody's business, Sophia admitted. Jake chuckled, the sound warm and genuine. Sit. Then I'll show you around the ranch. I should really try to contact my office, Sophia said, though she made no move toward her phone. Phone lines are down, Jake said, setting a plate in front of her that held more food than she usually ate in a day. Happens every time we get a storm like this. Sophia stared at the breakfast. Royale eggs, thick-cut bacon, hash browns, and toast made from bread that looked homemade. In her world, this would be a week's worth of calories. Here it seemed like a normal meal. I can't eat all this, she protested. You will if you're going to keep up with ranch work, Jake said matter-of-factly. Ranch work? I'm not doing ranch work. I'm a lawyer, not a farmhand. Jake's eyes met hers across the table, and she saw something that might have been challenge in their depths. Everyone earns their keep here, city girl. No free rides. Something about his tone sparked Sophia's competitive nature. She'd built her career by never backing down from a challenge, and she wasn't about to start now. Fine, she said, cutting into her eggs with more force than necessary. How hard can it be? An hour later, Sophia was reconsidering her bravado as she stood in the barn, staring at a horse that seemed roughly the size of a small building. Jake had introduced her to Thunder, apparently the gentlest horse on the ranch. "Just brush him down," Jake instructed, handing her what looked like a medieval torture device. "He likes long strokes and watch out for his back feet." "Watch out for his back feet?" Sophia repeated. "What happens with his back feet?" "He kicks when he's annoyed." "And what annoys him?" Jake's grin was pure mischief. "Nervous city girls, mostly." Sophia approached Thunder with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. The horse turned his massive head to look at her, and she could swear she saw judgment in his dark eyes. "Nice horse," she said tentatively, raising the brush. "Good Thunder. Gentle Thunder." The horse snorted and Sophia jumped back. "He can smell fear," Jake said helpfully from where he was mucking out a nearby stall. "I'm not afraid," Sophia lied, approaching Thunder again. "I'm just cautious." She managed to brush Thunder's neck without incident, gradually gaining confidence. The horse seemed to relax under her touch, and Sophia found the rhythmic motion surprisingly soothing. "See? Not so hard," Jake said, appearing beside her with that silent way he had of moving. "I think I'm getting the hang of it," Sophia said, then yelped as Thunder shifted his weight, bumping into her. Jake's hand shot out to steady her, his fingers wrapping around her waist. For a moment they stood frozen, his body warm and solid behind hers, his breath stirring her hair. "Easy," he murmured, and Sophia wasn't sure if he was talking to her or the horse. She turned in his arms, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. Jake's eyes were darker than she'd noticed before, and there was something in them that made her pulse quicken. "Sophia," he said quietly, her name sounding different in his deep voice. Before either of them could move, Thunder whinnied loudly, breaking the spell. Sophia stepped back, her cheeks burning. The brushing," she stammered. "Right," Jake said, his voice rougher than before. "I'll just check on the other horses." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of ranch activities that left Sophia exhausted but oddly exhilarated. She helped Jake feed the cattle, learned to milk a cow badly, and even managed to collect eggs from the chicken coop without getting pecked. By lunch she was dirty, tired, and sore in muscles she'd forgotten she had. But she was also more alive than she'd felt in years. "You did good today," Jake said as they sat down to sandwiches made from leftover roast beef. "Better than I expected from someone who's never been outside Manhattan." "I've been outside Manhattan," Sophia protested. "I went to the Hamptons last summer." Jake's laugh was rich and warm. "The Hamptons don't count, city girl." "Stop calling me that," Sophia said, though she was smiling. "What should I call you then?" Sophia considered this. In her professional life, she was Miss Chin or counselor. Her colleagues called her Sophia when they wanted something. Her mother called her disappointment when she thought Sophia couldn't hear. "I don't know," she admitted. "No one's ever asked me that before." Jake studied her face, his expression serious. "How about beautiful?" The word hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Sophia felt her breath catch, unprepared for the intensity in his gaze. "Jake," she said softly, not sure what she was trying to say. "I know," he said, standing abruptly. "You've got a life to get back to. Important depositions and $50 million cases." But as he walked away, Sophia found herself wondering for the first time if her important life was really as important as she'd always believed. By the fourth day, Sophia had settled into a rhythm that would have been unthinkable a week ago. She woke with the sun, helped Jake with morning chores, and found herself looking forward to their conversations over simple meals. The storm had finally passed, but new snow kept falling, keeping the roads impassable. She'd stopped checking her phone obsessively, partly because there was still no signal, but mostly because she was discovering a peace she'd never known existed. The constant anxiety that had been her companion for years was fading, replaced by something she couldn't quite name. "You're different," Jake observed as they walked through the snow-covered pasture, checking on the cattle. "Different how?" Sophia asked, adjusting the borrowed hat that kept her ears warm. "Quieter. More present." He paused, studying her face. "When you first got here, you were like a caged animal, all nervous energy and sharp edges. Now you look like you might actually be enjoying yourself." Sophia considered this. "I'm enjoying myself. That's the weird part. I should be climbing the walls, desperate to get back to civilization. Instead She gestured at the pristine landscape around them. "I'm happy." "Why is that weird?" "Because this isn't my life," Sophia said, though the words felt less certain than they had a few days ago. "I'm a corporate lawyer. I live in a penthouse apartment, eat at 5-star restaurants, and my idea of roughing it is staying at a hotel that doesn't have a spa. Jake stopped walking, turning to face her fully. And is that life making you happy? The question hit Sophia like a physical blow. When was the last time she'd been truly happy? Not satisfied with a professional victory or pleased with a successful negotiation, but genuinely, deeply happy? It's not about happiness, she said automatically. It's about success, achievement, making something of yourself. And what have you made of yourself? Sophia opened her mouth to list her accomplishments. Her law degree from Harvard, her partnership track at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms, her six-figure salary, but the words wouldn't come. I don't know, she whispered. Jake stepped closer, his eyes gentle. I know what you've made of yourself. You're strong, intelligent, capable of anything you set your mind to. But you're also kind. I've seen how you talk to the animals, how you worry about Thunder when he seems restless. You're funny when you let your guard down, and you're beautiful in a way that has nothing to do with expensive clothes or perfect makeup. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. Jake. I'm not finished, he said, his voice growing stronger. You're also lost, Sophia. You've been so busy climbing the ladder that you forgot to ask if it was leaning against the right wall. Before she could respond, a sound made them both freeze. A low growl coming from the tree line about 50 yards away. Jake's entire demeanor changed instantly, his body going tense and alert. Don't move, he said quietly, his hand moving slowly toward the rifle he always carried when they were out in the pasture. Sophia followed his gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. A massive black bear had emerged from the trees, its attention focused directly on them. It was bigger than anything she'd ever imagined, and it was moving in their direction. What do we do? She whispered. We back away slowly, Jake said, his voice calm despite the danger. No sudden movements, no running. Bears can outrun horses. They began moving backward, but the bear seemed to interpret this as some kind of challenge. It reared up on its hind legs, standing nearly 8 feet tall, and let out a roar that seemed to shake the ground. Sophia couldn't help it, she screamed and stumbled backward, falling into the snow. The bear dropped to all fours and charged. Jake didn't hesitate. He stepped directly between Sophia and the charging bear, raising his rifle. The shot echoed across the valley, and the bear stumbled but kept coming. Jake fired again, and this time the massive animal went down, sliding to a stop just 10 feet from where Sophia lay in the snow. For a moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing. Then Jake was kneeling beside her, his hands running over her body, checking for injuries. Are you hurt? Did it touch you? Sophia, talk to me. I'm okay, she managed, though she was shaking uncontrollably. Jake, you could have been killed. You stepped right in front of it. Of course I did, Jake said, pulling her up and into his arms. I wasn't going to let anything happen to you. Sophia looked up into his face, seeing the fierce protectiveness there, the way he held her like she was something precious. And suddenly everything clicked into place. You love me, she said, the words coming out as a statement rather than a question. Jake's arms tightened around her. Yeah, I do. Have since the second day you were here, when you spent an hour trying to convince that stubborn chicken to give up her eggs instead of just taking them. That's crazy, Sophia said, but she was smiling through her tears. We barely know each other. I know everything I need to know, Jake said firmly. I know you're brave and stubborn and too smart for your own good. I know you make terrible coffee but you try anyway. I know you talk to the horses when you think no one's listening, and I know you've got the biggest heart of anyone I've ever met. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. And I know that you're going to be the mother of my sons. Sophia's breath caught. Jake. I'm not asking you to decide right now, he said, his voice intense. But I'm telling you how I feel. You belong here, Sophia. With me. And someday when you're ready, we're going to have a family together. The certainty in his voice should have terrified her. A week ago, it would have sent her running back to the safety of her corporate world. But standing there in the snow, still shaking from their encounter with the bear, Sophia felt something shift inside her chest. What if I'm not ready? She asked. What if I can't give up my life in New York? Then I'll wait, Jake said simply. However long it takes. Sophia stared into his eyes, seeing a future there that she'd never imagined for herself. A life of quiet mornings and honest work, of children with dark hair and their father's steady strength. A life where happiness mattered more than success. The roads will be clear tomorrow, she said quietly. Probably. I should go back. I have responsibilities, commitments. You should do whatever makes you happy, Jake said, though she could see the pain in his eyes. Sophia stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, pouring all her confusion and longing into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I need time to think," she said. Jake nodded, though his arms didn't loosen around her. "Take all the time you need. But remember, some decisions can't be made with your head, Sophia. Sometimes you have to trust your heart." As they walked back to the ranch house, the dead bear behind them and an uncertain future ahead, Sophia found herself wondering if she had the courage to choose love over logic, happiness over success. The answer would come sooner than she thought. The sound of a snowplow working its way up the mountain road woke Sophia before dawn. She lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the mechanical scraping that meant her time at Morrison Ranch was coming to an end. 7 days. That's all it had been, but it felt like a lifetime. She'd arrived as a stressed-out corporate lawyer and somehow transformed into someone who could milk cows, brush horses, and find peace in the simple rhythm of ranch life. More importantly, she'd fallen in love with a man who saw her not as a collection of achievements, but as a woman worth protecting, worth cherishing, worth building a life with. Her phone, finally showing bars of signal, buzzed incessantly on the nightstand. 17 missed calls from her office, 43 emails marked urgent, and a text from her assistant that made her stomach clench. "Deposition postponed due to your absence. Partners want to see you ASAP. Career implications serious." Sophia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her old life pressing down on her like a physical force. She'd worked for 15 years to build her reputation, to earn her place at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. Walking away would mean starting over, giving up everything she'd fought for. But staying would mean giving up Jake. She found him in the barn, already working despite the early hour. He looked up when she entered and she saw him take in her appearance. She'd put her business suit back on, styled her hair, applied makeup. She looked like the corporate lawyer who'd arrived a week ago, and she could see in his eyes that he understood what that meant. "Roads are clear," he said quietly, turning back to the horse he was grooming. "I heard the plow. Your car's been towed to Peterson's garage in town. He says it'll be ready by noon." Sophia nodded, though her throat felt tight. "Jake, about what you said yesterday." "Forget it," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Heat of the moment, adrenaline from the bear. People say things they don't mean. But what if I did mean it?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "What if I meant every word?" Jake's hand stilled on the brush. "Sophia. I love you too," she said, the admission feeling like jumping off a cliff. "I love your quiet strength, your certainty about what matters. I love the way you see the world, the way you see me. I love this place, this life you've built." Jake turned to face her, hope and pain warring in his expression. But I don't know how to be anyone other than who I've always been. I don't know how to give up 15 years of work, how to disappoint everyone who's counting on me." "I'm not asking you to give up who you are," Jake said, stepping closer. "I'm asking you to become who you're meant to be." Sophia felt tears threatening. "What if I'm not brave enough? What if I try this and fail and we both end up miserable?" Jake reached out, taking her hands in his calloused ones. "Then we fail together." "But Sophia, what if we don't fail? What if we build something beautiful here?" Before she could answer, the sound of a car engine interrupted them. Through the barn door, Sophia could see a sleek black sedan making its way up the drive, completely out of place in the rural setting. "Expecting someone?" Jake asked. Sophia's heart sank as she recognized the car. "That's my boss." Richard Blackwood emerged from the sedan looking like he'd stepped out of a boardroom, his expensive suit and polished shoes absurd against the snowy ranch backdrop. He was followed by Sophia's assistant, Jennifer, who looked equally out of place. "Sophia," Richard called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Thank God we found you. When you missed the deposition, we thought something terrible had happened." Sophia walked out of the barn, Jake beside her, feeling like she was moving through a dream. Her two worlds were colliding and the contrast was jarring. "Richard, what are you doing here?" "Rescuing you apparently," Richard said, his gaze taking in her surroundings with obvious distaste. "Jennifer tracked your rental car GPS to this place. We've been driving all night." His eyes landed on Jake, and Sophia saw the dismissal there, the assumption that a man in work clothes couldn't possibly be important. "The Hartwell case is falling apart without you," Richard continued. "The client is threatening to pull their business, and the partners are asking serious questions about your commitment to the firm." "I was stranded," Sophia said weakly. "The storm could have been handled better with proper planning," Richard interrupted. "But that's water under the bridge. Pack your things. We'll have you back in Manhattan by tonight, and you can salvage this mess tomorrow." Sophia felt the familiar pressure building in her chest, the weight of expectations and obligations. This was her life, her career, everything she'd worked for. "Sophia," Jake said quietly, and something in his voice made her look at him. "The choice is yours." Richard finally seemed to notice Jake's presence. "And you are?" "Jake Morrison. This is my ranch." "Ah, the local who helped her," Richard said dismissively. "Well, thank you for your hospitality. I'm sure Sophia will send a proper thank you note." The condescension in Richard's voice made Sophia's temper flare. "Jake didn't just help me, Richard. He saved my life." "I'm sure he did his civic duty," Richard said impatiently. "Now, can we please go? We have a 6-hour drive ahead of us." Sophia looked between the two men, Richard representing everything she'd thought she wanted, and Jake representing a future she'd never imagined but now couldn't stop dreaming about. "Give me a minute," she said. She walked back into the barn, needing space to think. But Jake followed her, and when she turned around she saw everything she needed to know in his eyes. "Go," he said simply. "If that's your world, if that's what makes you happy, then go, Jake. But if you stay," he continued, his voice growing stronger, "if you choose this life, choose me, then I promise you'll never regret it. We'll build something real here, Sophia. A family, a future, a love that lasts." Sophia closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. When she opened them again, her choice was clear. She walked back outside, where Richard was checking his watch impatiently. "Richard," she said, her voice steady. "I quit." "What?" Richard's face went pale. "Sophia, you can't be serious. You're having some kind of breakdown?" "I'm having a breakthrough," Sophia corrected. "I'm choosing happiness over success, love over ambition. I'm choosing Jake." She turned to Jake, seeing the joy and relief flood his face. "If the offer still stands, I'd like to be the mother of your sons." Jake's grin was brilliant as he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around in the snow. "The offer stands forever," he said, setting her down and kissing her thoroughly. "This is insane," Richard sputtered. "You're throwing away your entire career for some cowboy fantasy." "I'm trading a career for a life," Sophia said, not taking her eyes off Jake. "There's a difference." 6 months later, Sophia stood in the same barn where Jake had first declared his intentions, wearing a simple white dress and holding a bouquet of wildflowers. Pastor Williams from town was officiating, and the small gathering included Jake's neighbors, who'd welcomed her with open arms. As they exchanged vows, Sophia thought about the woman she'd been, driven, successful, but ultimately empty. That woman felt like a stranger now. "Do you, Sophia Chin, take Jake Morrison to be your husband, to love and cherish, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Sophia said, her voice strong and sure. "And do you, Jake Morrison, take Sophia Chin to be your wife, to love and cherish, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Jake said, his eyes never leaving hers. "You may kiss your bride." As Jake's lips met hers, Sophia felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. She'd given up her corner office for a ranch house, her designer wardrobe for jeans and boots, her 6-figure salary for a life of honest work and simple pleasures. And she'd never been happier. Later, as they danced to country music under the stars, Jake whispered in her ear, "Any regrets?" Sophia looked around at their friends and neighbors, at the mountains rising majestically around them, at the life they were building together. "Only one," she said, smiling up at him. "What's that?" "That it took me so long to get lost in a snowstorm." Jake laughed, the sound echoing across the valley. "Well, Mrs. Morrison, I guess some people just take longer to find their way home." As they swayed together under the Colorado sky, Sophia knew she was exactly where she belonged. The city girl had found her cowboy, and together they would build a legacy of love that would last for generations.